Alright. Walling in. Good. $16cc, good. This scout, not so good. This scout is too early. As you can tell, there's not much to see here. Not much at all to see. And the Zerg is aware that you're going to see everything it does. So there's no element of the Zerg thinking you're not going to scout and then committing to a gas and then you scout. So the scout's just a little bit too early. The best time to go scout a Zerg on a 2-player map is when your SCV building your barracks completes. So your barracks finishes, you have that SCV like queued up to go scout the Zerg and hotkeyed and everything. And then you build your command center with another SCV that you pull from your mineral line. It's not a atrocious mistake. If you strongly think your opponent might go pool first, it's okay to scout really early, but that doesn't happen a lot. So you scouted no gases, and that means Zerg can't get Zergling speed or roaches in any reasonable amount of time. So this bunker is really unnecessary. 3 Marines, in parentheses with proper micro, can kill like as many Zerglings as Zerg could possibly build. You could like if Zerg just spams lings, slow lings, you can just like sit behind your wall and be really happy. So this bunker doesn't really need to happen. And the placement of it is not great. You want this thing to hug some sort of surface area. I like to put mine here. You could put it here. You could put it up here. You could put it down here. But something that where it's hugging some area so it can't get surrounded by lings. Anyway, bunker you don't need. And you're grabbing a couple barracks. Perfectly reasonable opening build. And a couple gas. And an orbital. And you're checking on the 3rd. Personally, when I see the Zerg didn't take a gas, I push out and take my watchtower. And I believe it's safe to do so. Tech lab. One thing I don't like is you don't have vision of the lower side of your base. So if an overlord were to fly in, it would see everything. Patrolling a marine or building a depot or 2 down here is worth it, I think. So a factory. At this point, you want to be rallying your main command center to your natural so you can start saturating it. And I like the eBay a lot. That's good. And you should be fighting for this tower. I think that's really important because like you're teching up aggressively. This is an aggressive 2-base opening against Zerg, and you don't want to. You want to give them the least amount of time to react to what you're doing as possible. So if you build medevacs and just move down, they get to see your whole army and react accordingly. But having this watchtower keeps your army and keeps Zerg in the dark for a lot longer. Alright, so you know Zerg has taken a 3rd, I believe. 2 reactors, very nice. Zerg gets a good scout. Interestingly, this is nearly identical to my Terran versus Protoss build. When I do this build against Zerg, I also do it fairly similarly, but my adaptation to the matchup is that I build reactor Hellions, like 4 to 6 Hellions, because they're very good early on at keeping tabs on the Zerg, and they're very good in your push as well for cleaning up Zerglings. Alright. So, this push has got to do a lot of damage. And he sees it coming perfectly. Left a couple of units behind. And you're going directly for the Zerg's third, and I like that. But he's got the answer. It's going to take some really good micro to beat this. I think the best thing you can do at this point, like, the best possible thing is to stim off the creep and split really well. The second best thing you can do is just lift up, because if these banelings connect, that's basically the end of the game. Pulling up the income tab, Zerg's a base up, and like 17 harvesters up, or something. Alright, so you stim off the creep. That was the best thing you could have done. Very nice. I feel like I've seen this replay before, but I haven't. Chasing down the drones is an interesting decision. I agree with it. I think it's correct. So, I probably don't break these rocks and go for more. You've killed his third, and now you've got a bunch of units you're not really using for anything. So I would regroup here, get your tank going, and I think this is a bit of an overcommitment here. So, these units got lost unnecessarily. They could have flown home in the medevacs. And no third base in sight. This is kind of an issue. You really need to get that third base started a lot earlier. That's your main issue, is your economy. As you can see, you've got wonderful production facilities, and you've got really good upgrades, but you don't have the money to support it. So getting that third would be a lot earlier is kind of necessary. The Viking is sweet. That's really good. Scanning for information is awesome. I always like to see players sacrifice anything just for scouting and for information. That's a good sign. That means you're kind of thinking about the game and aware of what could be happening to you. A lot of lower level players just like do a build and kind of just hope it works. But yeah, you're interacting very well with your opponent. Like you've got the Viking, you did the timing push against the third, so those things were really good. Your economy, not so much. So here, I kind of see you winning this game. You've killed a lot of units. I'd like this macro to be like a drop in his main. And these tanks kind of should push forward with your army. But yeah, I think this looks pretty good for you. That 3-3 can get started. And there you have it. So I think the biggest improvements are focusing on your macro that you have built. Your macro was really good. You built a lot of units, but they were often back at the natural, not helping. And getting this third up a lot earlier. And the third against Zerg has to be an orbital command. You need those scans against Zerg. You have to scan a lot because they've got burrowed stuff. They've got tech that you need to scan for, and you really need to scan ahead of your army so you don't get flanked and demolished. But building a bunker by an orbital is kind of what the sacrifice you have to make. I'll try not to repeat myself too much on the same mistakes. I haven't seen this map in a while. One thing I noticed last game is you didn't do any drops, and you need to do drops. That's how you make your medevacs worth it. If you're just going to bash down the Zerg, the thing that's going to stop you is banelings and fungal growth, and medevac healing doesn't help you all that much against banelings. It's okay against fungal, but yeah. So how did you see this coming? That's what I'd like to know. I like the cross-map scout because you saw his drone scout timing. Alright. Now, Forcewater made a comment about me not liking his 3 barracks build, and generally I really don't. Just because it's pretty inflexible, and you kind of have to commit without having a whole lot of information. And one example is against these roach type attacks. Like, right now you have no idea if he's all-inning or droning because you can't really move this stuff on the map safely. Hellions you can, Banshees you can, because they're faster, but this stuff you can't. So that's kind of the reason I don't like this style of play, but I think it's perfectly excellent at like below masters because it's very purposeful and straightforward, and just I think it's good. So you build 3 bunkers and he all-ins. So you should come out of this in a great position, just based on these bunkers. Say if he droned up heavily, you'd come out in a poor position. Yeah, this is definitely a build that works in all 3 matchups. Alright. Oh boy. So, it was a wash. Maybe you came out of that a little bit behind. Nope, you're fine. You came out of that perfectly fine. The reason that didn't go well is because the bunkers were not loaded when the attack hit. Bunkers give units +1 range, I believe. Could be wrong. And so they would have been firing. This looks pretty good for you. Zerg's building units and they're not killing you, so that's a good thing. Got 2 factories pretty early, so you're going to need a lot of gas. The optimal saturation per mineral line is 16. So you got too many on this mineral line, not enough on this one. I mean, you're pretty close to like what pro gamers are doing in this matchup, except pro gamers are doing this all off of 3 bases. They've found that it's defendable to get in a 3rd base in, and then it just gives your economy a huge boost. That's what's kind of been determined. So the pros are doing kind of fancier openings with Hellions and Banshees and Cloak and different things, but the look of a Terran mid-game, this is correct. Bunch of barracks, factories, double eBay, and ideally you want to get a 3rd before any of this. Like, TvZ pioneered this build where you get 3 CCs off just like 1 barracks, and then you gas and you tech up to Hellions and then Banshees. And he kind of dominated TvZ for a while doing that. And it's kind of a thin margin that you can survive with those builds, but you can. So, what I don't like about your style of play up to this point is you haven't ever like left your base. You haven't gotten a lot of information. And you move out, and you sort of get pummeled. Tanks. Well, let's look at tanks. They're expensive. They're slow to build, and they cost a lot of minerals and a lot of gas. And you have to upgrade siege mode. So, money-wise, tanks make up about the same amount as all your Marine and Marauder. So it's really important that you use your tanks effectively to make them worth building. So this is the bad type of siege up. The ideal would be like a tank here, a tank here, a tank back here, and maybe a tank over here. You want them to be spread out, and kind of you want to have a deep tank line. This is not so good because banelings are going to crash in and kill all your tanks. Now, it didn't happen as I predicted because his attacking army value was a lot lower than your defending entrenched army value. So, that's why that happened. But if you had two equivalent armies and you were clumped up like that, you would lose that battle. Alright, so you've seen Mutalisks, so you're turreting up, you're waiting for your 2-2 to push forward, seems reasonable. You've got your third up at like 18 minutes, pretty late for a third base. And you're not reinforcing your army. That's kind of the worst thing that you've done this game. You need to keep reinforcing your army so that when you engage, you're not fighting with half of your army. So do that, add some drops into your play. Say you had a medevac flying all the way around the map, and then when it's about here, your 2-2 finishes, and you push up here and you drop this fourth base at the same time, you're going to kill it. And if there's no fourth there, you go drop the third. And you force Zerg to make some difficult choices about where they're going to engage. So you've got your money down, throwing down a bunch of stuff, and this should look okay for you, unless your tanks all bunch up again. So if I were to start pushing here, I would first siege this tank and this tank. I'd siege these two right where they are. Then I'd push 2 tanks forward and siege them up, and then I'd start moving my bio. Now, doing this, you're just going to get demolished by Zerg. You need to be really deep with this tank stuff. Now in this case, his army was significantly weaker than yours, just based on army size. But he won because you engaged so horribly, terribly. So you keep pushing, and that's the right thing to do. You need to be aggressive against Zerg. The minute you can't attack anymore, Zerg just wins. They've got a bigger and better late game. And now you start some drops, and they do work. But it was a little too late. So let's pick out the 5 most important things from those 2 games. Most important thing is spread your tanks out when you're pushing. You want to be the engagement is always going to happen before you're at the Zerg's hatchery shelling it. It doesn't matter how far you get. You just want to be set up really well. That's number 1. Number 2. Send your macro, rally it to your army. Number 3, start your third base significantly earlier. Even if you just build it in your main base and you don't float it over for a long time, those extra mules and scans will pay for that 400 minerals in no time. Number 4, incorporate drops into your play. Drop very far locations from the Zerg. So if you're pushing their natural, drop in the back of their main. If you're pushing their third, which is kind of toward you, drop in the back of their main. You just want to be dropping far locations, so Zerg has to split up their army. And number 5, you want to have some sort of early game presence on the map. You don't want to be building 3 blind bunkers. So if you're going to go marine heavy, fight for that watchtower. So you can see what's coming, and you can make better decisions. Those are my top 5. At the end.